This activity is a really great activity to introduce Keynote to your students in the classroom, and also serves as a really great introduction to the app for teachers as well, just to build that familiarity with the app and user interface. So what we're going to do is we're going to have a look at the template itself, show you an example of how it looks, and then we'll go through and go step by step on each of the processes, and really encourage you to have an iPad with you and step along. Great thing about a video, you can pause it and you can catch up or do it again or watch it again. So let's jump in.
So the whole purpose of this activity is just to give the kids a bit of exposure to how to use Keynote and where some of the functions are inside it. So you'll notice here that I've just got a silhouette of a head with a heap of shapes, or 6 shapes off to the side of it. And then what we're going to teach the kids to do is not only how to import those shapes, but also how to recolour them, resize them and whatnot. And then we just use a transition effect to bring those shapes across into the head as a separate slide. So what I've done here is I've got a copy of the, I suppose the master copy that I'll send out to the students. I'm just going to run through what I would do with this in order to, to have the students go through and complete this task. So I'm just going to turn my video off now, mate, and I'll just run through it. You just have my voice, and I should have my cursor going across as well. So all I'm going to do here on the first screen is pretty simply just get them to put their name in. So they click on the box and then just literally type whatever their name is. Whilst they're also there changing their name, I encourage them to come up here and tap on that little arrow and rename the file as well. So rename the file to their student name, and it might be like whatever, like week 9 or week 10, term 1, and their name. And the next thing we're going to do is you're going to ask the students to select just one of these silhouettes. So there's not a huge amount to choose from, but just select one, and the others they're going to delete. So what they can do is they can just tap on the slide they don't want, and then just press on delete. You can also select multiple slides at once by tapping on the first one and leaving your finger on it, and then using another finger, separate finger, to tap on the other ones you want to select. And you'll notice it puts that big blue rectangle around all the ones you've selected, and then you can just delete 3 at a time. So the next thing we're going to do is going to get them to add between 4 to 6 shapes that represent something about them, whether it's a hobby, their favorite food, could be their favorite color, whatever it might be, and they're going to place those shapes around the silhouette of the head there. Okay, so it's all about giving them experience and exposure and practice on how to navigate themselves around the Keynote app. So if the iPad is held in landscape mode, you'll get this menu bar across the top. If it's held in portrait mode, so long and skinny, then that menu bar will disappear, and there'll just be a plus symbol there, but when you tap it, then these 4 things appear. So what we've got here is multimedia, and that's all your different types of media that you can import into Keynote. But we're going to jump in and use shapes today. So that's the little square and the circle resting on top of each other there. And inside shapes, there is about 740 something shapes now. And they're constantly adding new ones to it and whatnot. You can scroll through and like swipe down and scroll across and blah, blah, blah. But if you know what you're looking for, you can also press on search. So say one of the things the students want to put in is that their favorite fruit is an apple, for example. You can just type in apple, tap on the shape, and it will import it. It always, when you add a shape, it always puts it straight in the middle of the screen, and it always defaults to blue, which is the default color for Keynote. Don't worry too much about the color just yet. Let's just get the shapes in, and let's just put them in there for us. So I'll just grab 4. I'm going to grab a tree to represent that I like nature, possibly, and a palm tree even to represent that I like tropical weather as well. So once the shape is added there, you can see it's got the little handles around it, the blue dots. If you, with one finger, grab the corner of those blue dots, you can actually increase the size. So they go ahead and just between 4 and 6 shapes. I'm gonna just grab a dolphin, being my favorite animal, pop it up there. And lastly, I might just grab a, it should be in shapes, an aeroplane. So aircraft, maybe. And just chuck that in there. So there's my 4 shapes. That's they don't want to get too hung up on selecting them or whatnot. It's just, it's all about them. So what are your hobbies? What are your interests? What might you like to do? What's your favorite color? Whatever it might be. And then they place them outside there. Now, once we have the shapes there, we do want to recolor them, just to give the kids a bit of exposure then to, hey, once we have an asset or a shape or something in our slide, how do we go about changing the way it looks? So once something's there, you'll notice if I tap on any of these assets here, they have a blue handle that comes up around them. If you tap somewhere else outside the screen, there'll be nothing, no handles, no blue dots or anything like that. And so if I go to my paintbrush, which changes the way things look, it'll let me change the background color. So if I tapped on that, it's going to let me change the background color, but I'm just going to undo that and put it back to how it was. I'm going to stick with that color for now. But if I want to change the asset itself and change the color of the asset itself, you've got to click on the asset. You'll notice on these particular one that I'm using today, I've filled the background with a heap of different assets just to give it a bit of a more interesting flavor for the wallpaper, I suppose. But the ones we want to recolor are the shapes that the students have added. So for example, the apple. Now, I'm going to tap on the apple first, come up to the paintbrush. From the paintbrush, I'm going to go, we've got 3 options here: arrange, text, style. Style is where we change the color. It has these 6 default colors right here. So I could just go, you know what, I like red apples, so I'm going to just change it to red. That's one way to fill. Pretty simple. Click outside the screen somewhere and that apple's now changed to red. The other thing you can do is you can select your shape. You can come up to your paintbrush to recolor it, and rather than select any of those 6 there, if you tap on fill and you go to gradient, what you can do is, you've got preset, and we've just got a few screens on it, including a no fill, so if you want to make something transparent. You've got these color palettes there, and also an unlimited number of colors there. You've also got an eyedropper, so if you ever want to match a color, that's a great one to use. The eyedropper will match the color you select. This is a really cool one. I like the gradient. It lets you choose 2 colors and it blends them together. For example, from a palm tree, if I start with a nice green at the top as my first color, and my second color make it like a light brown, then it'll just blend those 2 colors together. Yeah. All right, cool. The other thing you can do is so I'm going to change my plane this time. The other thing you can do is you can put borders and stuff around it. So I'll change it to grey, but then you'll notice I can have a border, and I can select different lines for that border. So I can make it more like a marker, or it can be a solid line, or it can be like a crayon, whatever you might want to do. And then you can also change the width and the colour of that border. You can also put a shadow on. So I'll just put a bit of a drop shadow on that one. You'll notice now I've got a black border around my grey plane, and there's a slight shadow on there as well. And my dolphin I'm going to leave blue because my dolphin is blue anyway. So yeah, so we want them to put the shapes in and then have a go at recolouring them. Try to get them to avoid recolouring the head, because at the moment the white stands out really well. Okay, the next thing we're going to do is we're going to use a thing called Magic Move in order to move these shapes as a transition animation inside the head. So the way we're going to do that is tap on the slide, and we are looking for this one here called transition. Now when you get transition, it comes with this blue taskbar at the top saying that, hey, you're in animations at the moment, and until you get out of animations, Keynote thinks that you want to do, you're only concerned with animating things, not adding or changing. So just a bit of a heads up, if you see that at the top and you're wondering why you can't get the rest of your menu bar, it's because you need to get out of the animations part of it. So transition is actually an animation. So I'm going to add a transition, and the one we're going to select is these 2 little photos on top of each other here, the Magic Move. It's the only one that's yellow. So select Magic Move. It previews for you, and it's, funnily enough, it's not very magic at all, but that's okay. Once I press on the X, it'll say Magic Move animates objects from this slide to their positions on the next slide. it's recognized that those objects aren't on the next slide. So it's like, hey, do you want another copy of this slide so that we can get the objects to animate onto it? So you go, yes, please, duplicate that, and then I'm going to press done. So what I've got here now is I've got 2 slides that look identical, right? On my second slide, the one that I just duplicated, so in this particular example, it's slide number 3, I want to take my shapes that are outside my head and I want to move them inside my head. And you can resize them if you wish so they fit a little bit better. Yeah. And just place them wherever you wish. Now, I'm on slide number 2, they're outside my head. Slide number 3, they're inside my head. That's pretty much the extent of the activity, and that's enough to show the kids a heap of stuff with the toolbars. So we looked at the paintbrush, we looked at the shapes, and we looked at how then to do a really simple animation transition. So that's awesome for that activity. What we're going to do, and what I encourage the students to do, is to go into play mode and actually view it. And with Keynote, in order to advance to the next slide or the next transition or the next animation, whatever it might be, you just tap on the screen. So once you press the play button, then it's just a matter of tapping on the screen to advance it. So I've got my first slide there, and you'll notice in my second slide that magic move animation comes forward. I've also just put some animations on these little things saying that we use the iPad and the Keynote to create our thing today, to create our work today. So that's the demo of the lesson I would have run with you guys. The last thing to do, very last thing to do, is to share this now as a movie. So Keynote's got a great capability to export in a number of different ways. So if we go across the top and you have where we renamed before, that little arrow, you'll notice there's an export button, and we can export in all those different ways. So as a PDF, as a PowerPoint, a movie, an animated GIF. You can export each slide as individual images, and you can also export as a Keynote theme. So if you come up with like a template that you want to use with your class, and it might be a template you want to use a number of times, you can make the blank template up and save it as a Keynote theme. And then you can always, when you start a new Keynote, you can select that theme, and it's like adding another pro forma into the Keynote bank of pro formas that already comes. So anyway, I digress. For today, and for this first lesson, you want to export as a movie, and it'll default to 5 and 2 usually. Just change it down a little bit so the movie's a little bit quicker. Just leave whatever the defaults are up there, to be honest. And you'll see you've got all slides. So if you want all slides in your movie, you select all. Otherwise, you can nominate which ones you actually want. So we're going to go back now, just press export, and that'll bounce, probably not the correct terminology for movies, render maybe, that and export it across to a movie. So what I tend to encourage everyone to do is when you do it, always save video, and rather than try to email it straight away or airdrop it straight away, because that way you've got a copy in your photos. So this is the one. This is the one we made out of Keynote, and it'll just automatically turn into a movie. And movies are a great way for students to share their work, particularly if it's got any animations in it, or if it has any audio or video. Obviously, we can't export PDFs if they've got audio or video. We can, but none of that audio video will come across. So movies are great because not only they can capture all that multimedia content, but they also can be opened on nearly every single device, as opposed to if you try to save this as a Keynote document, for example, you can only open it on an Apple device, which isn't handy if you're jumping between a Windows device and an Apple device.